Hola, mi amigos. ¿Cómo están? I'm just kidding. This is Pastor Matt. Little shout out there to our Spanish-speaking audience, if we have any today. And the rest of you, we are so glad to have you with us at Surprise Church Bismarck's online Worship Anywhere production. Thanks for joining us again this week. Got lots of great stuff to dive into, so let's go right into this. First of all, download our app if you have not yet done so, and then we'll show some text prompts as well that you can use to get involved and connect with us. And while you're looking at that stuff, don't hesitate to check in on social media for charity. Specifically, go to our Surprise Church Bismarck Facebook page or just post a selfie and then click check in, and you can select Surprise Church Bismarck or start typing that in. Every 10 check-ins to the Surprise Church Bismarck Facebook page provides a day of care for a child in need. So thank you so much for your help checking in and doing good. So we are in a series right now called UNIFY, as you saw in that trailer video, where we are trying to unite as a church to make a difference in our city. And we've been talking through some of the things that really matter most to us at Surprise, including our values, because values are really what is intended to create a culture. We care about our culture as a church because we want to be a church that really exists for the betterment of the world and for the sake of our city. And that requires that we try to set and maintain a culture that values things that are important to God. And so we're in the second week of our Surprise 101 course, which is kind of a sub-chapter within this UNIFY series. These are 7 values that shape the Surprise Church culture. And you can go to our website and you can watch and rewatch and check out different resources about Surprise 101. But today we're going to be zeroing in specifically on value number 2, which is called equip the saints. It's a Bible word it's a Bible phrase that comes right out of Scripture, and we're going to talk about what that means today. So it doesn't just sound like church talk to you, but it sounds like something that actually we can live out together. First of all, let me ask you a question. What's my job? What do you think? What would you say? What's the pastor of a church's job? Here's a picture of a pastor that looks very much like a pastor I grew up listening to. They have a robe, and I have one of these. I had to buy one, and I've used them in the past. Those things around the neck are the stole. It's supposed to symbolize the yoke of Christ that we wear as leaders in the church. I guess growing up, I thought the pastor's job was to tell people what they need to know about God and kind of be the person that represents God to the people. And I thought, oh, that would be cool. I'd kind of like to do that. But, I think there's a lot of different opinions of what a pastor's supposed to do. And the reason I'm asking isn't to talk about myself today, but I think the way we understand what a pastor does in a church shapes our perception of what everybody else does. If you're a parent and your job is to clean up every mess in your house, what are your kids going to do? They're going to make the mess, not clean up the mess, because that's your job. And have you ever, as a parent, had that happen where you're like, clean up your mess, and a kid looks back and you're like, that's your job. And if you ever did that to mom, kids, you're going to get one of these. And it's not going to go well for you. So don't play that game with mom or dad, but especially mom. They'll say, not my job to clean up your junk. Your job. My job is to teach you how to do that. But your understanding of the leader changes what it means to be a part of the organization in a family, a business, or a church. So there's something called what I would just classify as a clergy-centered church. That's a church that really revolves around what the pastor does in a way that really creates a distinction between the pastor and everyone else. And that, if you look at the visual here, that really is trained professionals do the work of the church. And what they do is in the box. They teach, they care for the people that are a part of that organization. The members, the due-paying members, the participants, they care for, they counsel. And in a phrase that when I was trained as a pastor, was used all the time, shepherd the flock, shepherd the flock. So you're the one with the shepherd staff in your hand, and your job is to tend the sheep, give them the gospel, encourage them to follow Jesus, to care for them as sheep of the Lord. There was always something that bothered me about that. Even though it makes the pastor sound kind of important, it's sort of an anemic view of everybody else, right? Like it almost feels like the church is a bunch of toddlers and the pastor's job is to just clean up all the messes and spoon feed them baby food. And it always sounded sort of anemic. And something always bothered me about it, even as I was being trained to do it. And I think the point here, though, is, again, how the leader is understood shapes the members. So in this case, a clergy-centered church, the members, if it's trained professionals run the church, everybody else is unprofessional. If the clergy-centered church lets the professional teach, then everybody else is a listener. If the professional does care and counseling, everybody else is a passive recipient. If the clergy's job is to shepherd the flock, everybody else is the helpless flock. You're the sheep that can barely survive on your own. You're a lower class aspect of the church. You're a consumer, you're a member, and the pastor's job is to take care of you, right? And there's something that bothers me about that. And ultimately what happens is those situations, the church tends to eat itself. The church that keeps people down in the role of like consumer, eventually the consumers just eat the pastors. The pastors just become prey, because you can only hold God's people down so long before it just caves in on itself. So this doesn't work. It's still one of the most dominant forms of church in the world, and it doesn't work well. And many churches are struggling with this understanding, but Surprise aims to be different. We're trying not to be purely a clergy-centered church. Here's an example of a clergy-centered church. From my own past, I was at a church where Ken would go to church, and here's Ken's church routine, okay? Ken would get up in the morning, and he would dress up. He would usually wear a bright red sweater. I wasn't sure if that was because he was a Nebraska Cornhuskers fan or an Ohio State Buckeyes fan, or maybe like, I can't think of an NFL team that's bright red, but I couldn't figure out why but it was always like a bright red sweater. He would go to church. He would go to the church of his favorite pastor, which we had a couple of us on staff, but his favorite pastor was the preacher each Sunday. He would listen to the pastor's message. After church, he would find the pastor, follow them around, and if they're talking to someone else, he'd stand there and wait to talk to that pastor, like forever. It didn't really count. He didn't really go to church unless he spoke with the pastor afterward about the sermon and shook the pastor's hand. So finally, he gets to the front of the line, and the pastor, whoever was preacher that day, shook their hand and then shared the feedback on the message. Here's some things I thought about the message. Here's what I liked. Here's what I wasn't sure about. Here's a story you maybe need to think about. Here's an article that you might want to read. Just his job was to kind of provide critique and commentary on the message. And then he would go and sit down and have coffee with other members and do the same thing, discuss what he liked and didn't like about the message, and then repeat next Sunday. You notice how much of that revolves around the pastor? You notice how much of that just revolved around Ken being a consumer critiquing the pastor, who didn't really feel like he went to church if he didn't shake the pastor's hand and tell him what he thought of the sermon. See, here's the thing about clergy-centered churches. They're all about buildings and programs. They're about professionals providing programs in buildings, usually. They're about serving members, which can then become unhealthy for members who see themselves as critics and consumers. And that's why they become inherently political. You participate as a member in that system long enough, you start to accumulate a louder voice. And so there's a tremendous amount of power of being a consumer in the setting a long enough time. You begin to develop credibility and influence, and your voice becomes heard much louder than people who are brand new, and that is an accumulation that can be unhealthy for the church. It's also not healthy for the pastors and churches themselves. I'm participating in a clergy health group, and one of the things that we shared was the average pastor that graduated from seminary, where pastors are often trained, lasts 5 years in a church, and then they quit. They find another job. 5 years. The average pastor surveyed says that they would take another job if they could find one that paid enough. And this isn't healthy for churches either. That 20% of churches, Gallup said last year, would close by the middle of 2022 in America. So there's thousands and thousands of churches that are at a risk of not even existing anymore because they're struggling under the weight of, figuring out how to re-establish themselves during the pandemic, realizing that they don't really need that pastor after all. And so if the entire church was built around this outdated structure, well, what's the point at all? And they're struggling to find a reason to be. So in Ephesians chapter 4, Jesus gives us a radically different approach for what a church is and what it's meant to be. And the irony here is this was written down before many, symptoms came up that were unhealthy in the church. So this is not like a correction. This is meant to be the direction of the church. Here's what Paul writes to a church in Ephesus, which is in modern day Turkey, Asia Minor. And listen to what he says to this new church. He says, but to each one of us, not just the preachers, not just the leader, but to each one of us, grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. This is why it says, when he ascended on high, he took many captives and gave gifts to his people. What does he ascended mean? Paul kind of says in parentheses here, except that he also descended to the lower earthly regions. He who descended is the very one who ascended higher than all the heavens in order to fill the whole universe. Lots there, won't unpack it all. But the big highlights I want to pull out of this complicated passage right now is that Jesus has a plan. It says that he wants to fill the entire universe. But he wants to do it in a particular way. He wants to do it through his gifted people. It says he ascended into heaven, and he decided to go there because he could provide for us through the power of his Holy Spirit in a way that he couldn't if it were just one guy walking around the earth. And so he decided to give the gift of the Spirit and gifts of the Spirit to each believer so that they could play a unique role in helping God fill the universe. God wants to fill the earth through his gifted people, but it has to start with the church. Because if people don't even fill the church with his gifts, the church isn't going to be able to fill the world. We have to learn how to be healthy as churches so that we can play our role in what God's plan is for the universe. And so here's how Paul now says, okay, that's his end game. Here's the process. Here's what that looks like in real time. It says, so Christ himself gave, now he names 5 titles you've probably heard before if you've been around Surprise for a while. These are the 5 different callings that you have as part of God's family. Christ himself gave the apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors or shepherds, and teachers. So these 5 different roles are very different, very distinct. And he gave them to his people, everyone who believes, not just the pastors, to equip people for works of service. Do you see that? The goal of ministry should be to equip his people, equip the saints for works of service, so that the body of Christ might be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. So here's what that means. Jesus has given you, if you trust him, if you know him, if you are a member of his family, he actually has a role for you to play that has nothing to do with being a critic or a consumer, has nothing to do with just being a passive recipient. Now, all of us are going to need to receive grace from each other. That's 100% part of the life of faith. But it's not just receiving, it's also offering who God has made you to be in that family. And so Jesus has given you a gift and a calling to play in his family. And he does it for these reasons. He said the goal is that he would equip you for God's work, to build up the church, to unite or unify believers, as our series is called right now, and then to help us become more mature as believers. Because if you don't have an understanding of how you're hardwired to contribute, you're not going to be able to unite with people who are different. You're going to probably resent people who are different, and you're not going to be as mature as you could be. You're going to be sort of immature, off on your own, maybe seeing yourself as one of those consumers. Here's a visual we talked about in recent weeks that sort of gives you a visual summary of what this looks like. On the left, you have the APEST acronym, Apostles, Prophets, Evangelists, Shepherds, Teachers. And then the right is just a functioning, symbolic, image-based picture of what this looks like in the church. You have apostles, people who like to start and create new things and blaze ahead, blaze a trail for the church to accomplish big new things. You have evangelists who love to go out and win people over like salesmen for Jesus and welcome and invite. Then you have people on the inside like shepherds who care and help one another care for each other's needs and look in on one another, encourage each other spiritually. We have teachers who will help us organize information and instruct people and train people. And then we have prophets who make sure that the boundaries are intact, that we're not stepping outside of God's intention, that we're hearing from God when we need to hear from God, in supernatural and natural ways. So this is how it's supposed to work. And if you haven't identified your own calling yet in this paradigm, text serve that number, 380-8210. And what we'll do is we'll send you some links. One of them will be go in and take a survey that helps you uncover how you're hardwired to function in God's family. And this is why it's so important. Imagine a hospital where you go in there with an appendectomy, or now let's say you have a real bad case of gout. You go in there and it's just not happening. So you got to go in there and they do whatever they need to do for gout, which I don't even know if they can do anything. And you're in the hospital bed and they're babying you and they're bringing you the hospital food, and you have that big old plastic straw slurpy cup full of water and ice. And eventually the nurse walks into the room and he's like, "Yeah, I think you're better. Isn't that great?" I'm like, "Sure. Can I go home now?" I'm like, "Well, actually, we got a teacher down the hall who's going to train you how to be a doctor." Say what? I mean, if I get up, you're going to see my backside. I'm a patient. This is like one of those patient costumes. I'm a patient at the hospital. I'm not a doctor. Oh, I know. But now that you're healthy, now that you are whole again, we're going to train you how to play your part in this hospital. Could you imagine going to the hospital and being told that when you get better? Like, okay, now let's become a nurse. Let's become a doctor. Let's become an orderly. Let's become a janitor. Let's figure out what your role is in the church. Like, what a weird hospital that would be. Or imagine going to a restaurant where you sit down and you're like, "What's special today?" And the waiter's like, "Well, sir, it's this, and ma'am, it's that, and oh, yeah, I need some more time." They come back. "Oh, can I take your order now? How about a beverage?" And they're serving you like crazy. And then they're like, "All right, what do you want to eat?" And you get the special, and you apply your senior discount, or you get the children's meal for your kids or whatever. And then after the meal, instead of a bill, they come over and like, "All right, here's the apron. There's a table over that needs a waiter." Or, "Here's the chef's hat. Can you go flip burgers in the kitchen?" What a weird restaurant that would be, where the patrons become cooks. Imagine a hospital where the patients become doctors. Imagine a restaurant where the patrons become cooks. Or in today's language, imagine a church that leaves the building. We're a weird kind of hospital. We're a weird kind of restaurant because we're an organization in which the clergy aren't intended to stay on top and play this professional role. My job is to equip the saints so that the believers are unified, understand and know how to contribute with their gifts, build up the body of Christ, unite together, mature one another, and transform the world. That's what the church Jesus created is meant to do, so that the entire world, the entire universe will be full of Jesus through Jesus' gifted people. And that's happening all over the place. It's happening all over the world. And it's happening in our church. I love these visuals, just a few of our community groups where people aren't just leaving church to the professionals on Sunday. Upper left is our men's group. I accidentally slept in on Tuesday. They met without me. They talked about Jesus. They prayed for one of their members who was sick, who literally got healed that day. He went to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Your heart's better." Like, this is crazy stuff. And it happened when I wasn't even there. All these groups and many of our other groups are doing church together. They're inviting new people to connect. They're praying. They're talking about our weekly messages, and they're being the church together because we as a community are equipping the saints for ministry, and everybody has a unique role to play in that. Every summer we do something called the Great Grill Adventure. And some people, open up their garage doors and just grill in the front yard, invite neighbors to come and connect. And we like to show people how to create environments in your neighborhood that introduce people to one another and then ultimately create relationships where faith can be shared. And I just talked to a couple from our church last Sunday who said, "You know what? We were a little late. We're doing it in October, but they're having an event, just inviting people to come over and eat and maybe grill and have a bonfire and just doing it for fall instead of summer. But their whole intent is to follow the steps to build relationships, to deepen connections, and to be the church in their neighborhood." This month, we're doing the Surprise Acts of Kindness. And yeah, I might have tights and the videos on this webpage, and I might be Captain Kindness in elementary schools, but the real superhero is Jesus. We want to share his kindness in our city. And it's not something that I do The church does, it's something we want to equip you to do. So when it's Halloween, grab a stack of kindness cards, give extra candy, big candy bars away, and put the kindness cards in their bag and say, pass it along. Find ways to demonstrate the love of God and the kindness of God. Because it's not about what the pastor does, it's about what the church does. These two differences couldn't be more distinct. A clergy-centered church on the one hand, and actual church on the other. Instead of trained professionals, it's about being equipped believers, discovering Christ, and then discovering how he hardwired you to make a difference in the world, in your job, in your family, and in the church. It's about not just being taught, but growing together. It's not just about getting care and counsel from clergy, but it's about caring and supporting one another. It's not about just shepherding the flock from a professional, but it's about reaching out to the community and being the church together. Here's the newsflash. Pastors are going to disappoint you. And sometimes I've had people in my career, I've been doing this a long time, and I've had people leave the church I was a part of because I didn't serve them in the way they thought a good pastor would. You didn't seem to have time for me on Sundays. You didn't care for me when I was in need, even if I didn't even know they were in need. I should have known because they're a part of this church, and the pastor should have done X, Y, or Z. And it can be exhausting for pastors because we can't satisfy every need. We can't provide for everyone's spiritual wholeness. Our job is to equip the saints, to help people do that for one another. Because Jesus is the only superhero. Jesus is the only one that will never disappoint you. Don't let your faith be in a pastor. Don't even let your faith be in a church. Let your faith be in Jesus Christ. Because when you properly understand who he is and listen to what he says the church is meant to be about, you're going to want to play your part in Jesus' plan to fill the entirety of your universe through his gifted people. That includes you. We're here as a church to help you do that. Whether you live in Bismarck area or far away, we would love to help you play your role. So text us, follow one of these text prompts, and just let us know what you are interested in doing, how we can equip you to maybe start a non-local group in your city, how to be a part of the Kindness Challenge, how to do things like the Summer Grill Adventure in the fall. We'd love to help you figure out what it looks like for you to play your role in Jesus' unfolding kingdom. Thank you so much for staying with us, watching this today. I hope it blesses you, and I can't wait to see what God has planned for you as he fills the universe through his gifted people. God bless you. We'll see you next week.
You are calling me again. I hear your voice upon the wind. In the quiet, in the still,